It is September 24th, 2025, and we are watching as Israel is continuing to carry out international attacks wherever it pleases, targeting the latest attempt at a flotilla aimed at bringing aid to the Palestinian people in Gaza, who right now are experiencing an ongoing famine that is spreading day by day. Of course, the US doesn't care about that. It doesn't care if its own citizens are murdered by Israel in southern Lebanon. Oh, and it also apparently doesn't care about Al Qaeda returning to New York, as you had Abu Muhammad al Jalani welcomed by the US establishment with open arms this week, addressing the United Nations General Assembly. So, what does all of this tell us about the current state of tensions and where the US stands, how much it is willing to just put out in the open for the entire world to see? Well, we got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Laith Marouf, a Palestinian Syrian journalist and executive director of Free Palestine TV based in Lebanon. Laith, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Good to be with you, Rachel.
It's always good to have you on the show. Now, I want to get your take on the latest, and I want to actually start with some breaking news here as it's being reported that at least 20 people have been injured in southern Israel after they were hit by a drone that was notably launched from Yemen. So we have not seen Ansar Allah out of this fight. They continue to launch attacks. You've got the Israeli Defense Forces saying that the drone struck the town of Eilat on the Red Sea coast, with attempts made to intercept it. Can you take us through kind of the latest and what we know there so far?
So there's a lot of videos out from the colonists that were, I guess, on their summer vacation filming. And so we saw the angles from the sea, from the streets, and this drone passed all the Iron Dome, all the interceptors, and managed to hit its target, leading to the 20 somewhat. Now it's some sources are saying 24 injured and two killed. They also the Navy of Israel that had some pieces in the port there, and they removed them out of the port in fear of more drones coming and hitting them like sitting ducks, basically, in the port. So this is a continuation of Yemen's support front with the Palestinians in Gaza, and Yemen's weapons have now become much more effective, I guess, with the ability of Yemen over the last year and a half to map out all the defensive systems that are there and which weapons to use with them.
Yeah, and that's good to keep in mind, especially as we continue to see the latest here and pay attention to the fact that Ansar Allah is doing this in defense of Palestine, right? They're standing up for the Palestinian people. They've made it clear that, hey, if you want these attacks to stop, you can stop your genocide and we will be peaceful if you choose peace, clearly. Israel has made it clear that they have no plans to do that. And you, of course, have the US supporting Israel in this genocide. You also have the US supporting the former leader of Al Qaeda, who has now made his way to New York, and he is now being held as the quote unquote president of Syria, even addressing the United Nations General Assembly, claiming he's going to usher in a new era for Syria, which also notably includes peace with Israel, because that's what the US is requiring. How do you view Abu Muhammad al Jalani's presence at the UNGA as he's now being paraded around New York when just a few years ago he was treated like Washington's most wanted terrorist?
Yeah, he had a $10 million award for his capture or killing. And of course, we saw the picture of Al Julani standing in Central Park with the backdrop of all the high risers in New York. This is the same Al Julani that was the second in command of Al Qaeda in the greater Syria area, and the second in command of ISIS, the same Al Qaeda that, of course, committed September 11th. So it is a time that we're living in where everything is now in the open and revealed. Anyone that had a doubt why September 11 happened, who was behind it, and what was the intended outcome of it is now confirmed to everybody. Al-Qaeda has always been a American CIA tool aligned with the Zionists, creating chaos to drag in the United States into areas that it wants to destroy, basically making excuses for the presence of the US to destroy countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. And for years, of course, we heard about women's rights, human rights, democracy in Syria, and none of that is a question now on the table. Nobody cares in the Western media or the Western elite or Western human rights organizations about the fate of minorities in Syria, the fate of women, the fate of education, any of those things anymore, as if it doesn't exist just because the Assad government was removed, and its only fault right now is revealed to us, because if the issue of human rights and women's rights and democracy are not on the table anymore with the presence of Julani, what's the only difference between Julani and Assad is their position against Zionism and against the state of Israel. And that's basically why Arab countries and Muslim countries are destroyed, is to make them submit to Zionism. This is what it is.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very important point, right? And we're seeing this play out as we saw even just the meeting between Al-Julani and former CIA director David Petraeus, who of course oversaw the covert CIA campaign known as Operation Timber Sycamore that funneled weapons into Syria in an effort to overthrow Assad. Petraeus sits there and he's like, "Oh yeah, remember when I oversaw your arrest and you were in custody for about 5 years?" And it's like, yeah, you look at that and you go, "Oh, that's interesting how all of a sudden he was then ready to lead Al-Qaeda after that in Syria," and the timing of it all. But it's like exactly as you were noting there, the US is not hiding it anymore. Everything is kind of out in the open and they're almost putting it right in front of your face on purpose. Why do you think that is versus kind of the past approach of, oh, it's all about freedom and democracy and national security, whereas now they're almost like, yes, this is what we're doing, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, so the outright genocide that is broadcasted 24 hours for the last 24 months has destroyed 80 years of cumulative propaganda from the West that included, of course, Zionism and love for Israel. And so what we see is that the whole empire, with its Zionist component, have now given up. They know that they cannot win a propaganda war anymore. You cannot make up for 80 years of goodwill suddenly. You have to build a whole generation has to be either killed or two generations have to pass before any of the propaganda of the West can work again. So as Israel has given up on the propaganda war and is outright genociding, is outright declaring that it's committing genocide, we see the United States and the empire as a whole now moving in that direction. It cannot win a propaganda war, so the only other kind of war, other than the physical one that they can fight, is a psychological one. And the Israelis, as we see, cannot win any of their wars in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iran, but they can, conduct war in ways where there's mass killing incidents that are supposed to break the psychological will of the other. And they're doing it and they're rubbing it in your face and dancing on top of your grave. And they're, touting you, saying, what international law? Who's going to come to save you? Look at what I can do and no one can stop me. So that's the other only kind of war that is conducted right now, because the propaganda war is lost for the West. And now they're playing a psychological warfare in hopes that since they cannot win physical war on the ground, that the People who are resisting will give up just from the sheer magnitude of death that we are seeing.
Yeah, and they seem to have underestimated the people that they are picking this war with quite a bit, but I guess they haven't figured that one out yet. Now, another topic that I wanted to bring up here, because I think it's interesting that this week we're seeing this wave of countries saying that they are going to move to recognize a Palestinian state. You've got France, Belgium, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Portugal, and a few others. But then they come in and they insist that, oh, yeah, we want to see a Palestinian state, but Hamas can't be involved in the leadership. Oh, and we've got to throw in some pro Israel talking points here. So, how do you view this move? I mean, on one hand, yes, they are raising awareness about the Palestinian cause, but on the other hand, we still have an ongoing genocide. It doesn't seem as though they're taking any steps to outright stop that genocide. So, how do you view this kind of wave of recognition of a possible Palestinian state?
I see it as an attempt of delay tactic. As the pressure builds up within the populace of these states, they're worried about explosions in the streets, of violence. As most people, as we see right now, for instance, also the situation in Italy with 2 days of general strike, all schools or ports or mass transportation has been shut down for Gaza. And this also led for the Italian Navy right now sending a ship to protect, by the way, the flotilla. That's another thing that we may talk about. So this is clearly an attempt to delay the explosion of confrontation with the elite who are refusing the will of the people in Canada, in the UK, in Italy, in Spain, in whatever it is. All of these countries, the vast majority, poll after poll are showing us, are against the genocide and are for the liberation of Palestine. Even some polls are showing us that the vast majority of under 25s are for Hamas in countries like even the United States. This is how much there is a chasm between the opinions of the elite that control these countries and their own populace. So, to divert some of this pressure, they are now doing this symbolic acceptance or admittance of a Palestinian state that doesn't have any of the components of a state. It doesn't have democracy. You're not allowed to elect Hamas. It doesn't have control of its airspace, and it will not have a military. This is what these countries are proposing. So while a genocide is being committed, and they don't say anything about stopping the genocide or disarming a country that is committing the genocide. So suddenly they've just accepted Palestine as a country, and now resistance to its occupation is legal. Then, if Palestine is a country according to Canada and is occupied by Israel, then it has the right to resist. So
Mhm.
they've what they're doing is not only on the one hand this delay tactic, but on the other, this actually exposing them. They're so desperate to delay the explosion in the streets, in the communities in the West, that they are opening themselves to legal precedents. There's the Foreign Enlistment Act, the Foreign Enlistment Act that is in the UK and Canada, that bars anyone from joining a military that's at war with your own country, a country that is not at war with your country. So Israel is at war with Palestine, but Palestine is not at war with Canada. If you go as a Canadian to Israel to fight a war against Palestine, then you are liable to jail time in Canada. It's a federal crime. This is the same in the UK. So they have not calculated, I think, the extent of what they've just done, even though it's symbolic.
Wow, that's so interesting. I did not even think of it that way. But yeah, you've got these countries that are acting like, oh, we're doing something. And I'm with you. I think that is trying to pacify the public, trying to be like, yeah, sure, we'll recognize Palestine, but yet they're not actually doing anything meaningful for the Palestinian people who are being targeted in this ongoing genocide. Now, when it comes to the actions of ordinary civilians, we are seeing currently another attempt at a flotilla aimed at taking aid to Gaza by sea. You've got the Global Sumud Flotilla, which has a fleet made up of over 500 people. They are reporting explosions near their boats, seeing multiple drones around the fleet, and that their radios were being jammed and their communications interfered with overnight. All right, how do you see this fleet? I mean, yes, they are drawing attention to the international crimes that Israel is willing to commit, right? They are raising awareness about the Palestinians, but how do you see them in terms of the overall bigger picture when it comes to, again, this ongoing genocide?
I had said that before, that maybe this flotilla should, instead of heading to Gaza with the clear outcome that we've seen over the last 10 years of these, if not more, of these flotillas, that they should maybe blockade the Strait of Gibraltar to any shipping by the powers of weapons to Israel, or the Strait of Sicily, between Sicily and Tunis, or just land on the British base in Cyprus. The coast is open. They can just do that and take it over. And the Cyprus UK base controls much of the surveillance and target acquisition for the Zionist genocide in Gaza. And it would be actually better to see British soldiers beating up this flotilla than Israeli ones. But having said that, it seems like there's something different happening right now, because there is elected officials from both Italy and Spain on these boats. So we saw yesterday Spain say that if Israel attacks the flotilla, that it will retaliate. We don't know what does that mean, but we also know that maybe there's some of the Spanish Navy moving. We also heard just a few minutes ago, an hour ago, just before getting on this show, that there is right now an Italian destroyer that is moving towards the location of the flotilla to try to give them some defense. And so, I don't know, maybe they will succeed in doing something different this time. Maybe the pressure has built up to a point where the outcome will be better. I hope, of course, for the safety of everybody on these boats. And we'll see if actually some major crime is committed by the Israelis, how the Italian or Spanish Navy will respond. This is going to be, I think, dramatic. We also heard today the president of Colombia talk about an international force to defend the Palestinians. And the president of Indonesia, both of them in their speeches to the United Nations General Assembly. There could be things that we never dreamt about that could happen. But I'm still cautious personally with these states, if they will be willing to go to war with Israel, basically.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard at this point when you are, 2 years into this phase of the genocide and you've seen how much all of these countries have been willing to just sit back and not do anything when their own citizens are targeted as aid workers in Gaza, and Israel intentionally murders them, and those countries just go, oh, okay, yeah, that's bad, and then they move on with their life if we even get a statement like that at all. And another story, the last one that I wanted to bring up here, which includes a version of this, is that you also have Israel continuing its attacks on Lebanon, continuing to violate what is supposed to be the ceasefire. And in one of the latest attacks, Israel killed at least 5 people, including 3 children with drone strikes in southern Lebanon. And there's been some back and forth as to whether these victims or some of them were US citizens. The State Department has made it clear it does not want to claim any of them. But what does this attack tell us about the current state of tensions, especially as we are, 1 year out from the horrific pager terror attack that Israel did carry out in Lebanon? And around this time last year, you had Israel carrying out a number of attacks that, of course, we weren't supposed to see this time this year because of this ceasefire that Israel just keeps violating.
Yeah, this week, just past week, was the terrorist pager attack, as you mentioned. It was also the commemoration of the Sabra and Shatila massacre 43 years ago. And it's very significant because at that time, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, was guaranteed by President Reagan that if they drop their weapons, get on ships, and leave Beirut to Tunis, that the women and children and elderly that will be left in the refugee camps will be protected. And what happened was that the Lebanese forces, Phalange, with the help of the Israeli military, surrounded the Shatila camp and the Sabra neighborhood and slaughtered 3,000 people in a span of 48 hours, mass rape and mass killing of children and women. And 12,000 people were disappeared and never found. So, it's significant because of all this talk about disarming Hezbollah and these attacks that happened over the last week that have been much more recurrent by the Zionists. And I think it's part of this psychological warfare. So also this week is the commemoration of the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. That attack was deliberate on a family in a car, and they are American. Their extended family says they are American. They were back on vacation. By the way, the village, Vintage Bale, half of it are American citizens that go back and forth in the summer for summer vacations. There's a big, big part of the South villages that are mainly, even sometimes 75% diaspora Palestinians Lebanese that own homes there, like they're Australian or Canadian or American. So, and it was horrendous, the attack. The images, 3 beheaded children, basically. This was a fragmenting, armor-piercing missile that hit the car and, cut their heads off. It caused a lot of anger here. There was a national day of mourning where all the schools were closed, and I think that these attacks, coupled with the statements of Thomas Barak, the envoy of the United States to the region, who's also the ambassador to the U.S. To Turkey of the United States, that openly say they're arming the military to attack Hezbollah and their own citizens in these wars of Lebanon, that there also will be no peace or return of any territories that Israel had occupied. This is in the name of coming out of the mouth of Thomas Barak, or that there will be only a submissive party and a dominant party and no peace. And basically, there will be no disarmament of Hezbollah. No one here in Lebanon will accept that as long as all these attacks are happening and the occupation is there.
Yeah, I think that's a very important reminder, as you're noting there, right? Looking back decades ago at that massacre and being reminded that it is a very important reminder to Hezbollah today not to disarm, not to believe what the West is telling them, especially as we continue to see these regular attacks. I know that there is a lot at stake here all around, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Laith Marouf, a Palestinian Syrian journalist and executive director of Free Palestine TV, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Have a nice day, Rachel.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you subscribe to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank you all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.